BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. And hello and welcome to this special presentation of Black Box Online Radio. In this episode, I will be discussing the Netflix docuseries American Conspiracy: The Octopus Murders. And I learned about this one because it begins in the state of West Virginia. I was actually almost going to the airport and about to come back to West Virginia, and a family member let me know that not only was there this Netflix docuseries that was going to be discussing some true crime and conspiracy events in the state of West Virginia, but it actually begins in the city of Martinsburg, which is very close to where I grew up. Martinsburg is in Berkeley County, and I'm not from Berkeley County, West Virginia, but I grew up very close to there. We went in and out of Martinsburg all the time, and I was quite curious to know what they were going to share, because I have to be very honest with you guys, before they made this Netflix docuseries, I had never heard of the Octopus Murders, and this is not going to be a traditional film review. This is instead just going to be a discussion where I'm going to pull out certain ideas from their presentation and respond to them, but it begins by investigating the suspicious death of Danny Casolaro from the early 1990s. He was found dead in the Sheraton Hotel in Martinsburg, West Virginia, in what appeared to be an apparent suicide. However, that is heavily disputed by the Netflix docuseries. And one of the first things that my family was thinking about as we were watching this was, well, where on earth is the Sheraton Hotel in Martinsburg, West Virginia? I first went there in 1995, and I can't even begin to remember the Sheraton Hotel. And I did a little bit of Googling, and it has since been renamed the Holiday Inn, and the Holiday Inn has been there as long as I have. And I was on TripAdvisor, and it said that mostly the interiors of the Holiday Inn have not been updated since the 1970s, but Danny Casolaro was found dead in room 571 there. An interesting fact is, the Holiday Inn in Martinsburg, West Virginia has a restaurant called Heatherfield's, and I think that I have only matched with one girl from West Virginia on Tinder, ever. And I was talking to her a little bit, then I invited her to come have lunch with me at Heatherfield's, the restaurant, and then she's just like, ew, no, bye. And I told somebody about that, and they said, well, Ned, what are you doing? You just invited her to a hotel on the first date? And I said, no, it's not like that. I just like their sandwiches. True story, by the way. And that person's just saying, oh, so you're not a creep, you're just stupid. And I was like, yeah, okay, fair enough. But back to this story. Danny Casolaro was found dead in room 571 in the bathtub, and it appeared to be self-inflicted mutilations to his wrists partnered with the flowing of the water. And this is mostly a true crime channel, so for somebody like me to look at this from a basic true crime perspective, I was thinking immediately, this doesn't sound like something that immediately jumps out as murder. Instead, those things are all consistent with suicides that we can read about in countless forensic stories. Now, here is where it gets bizarre, and I'm just going to read this segment from Danny Casolaro's own Wikipedia page. Shortly before his death, Casolaro told people that he was nearly ready to reveal a wide-ranging conspiracy involving the Inslaw case, which dealt with Iran-Contra, the October surprise, and the closure of BCCI. His papers included clippings, handwritten notes, that named former CIA officers and arms dealers. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because there's also a more important sentence here, and that says that he had been led into the Bermuda Triangle of spooks, guns, drugs, and organized crime. And this is what American Conspiracy: The Octopus Murders is trying to show, is that somebody, such as Danny Casolaro, was investigating an interconnected network of not only conspiracies, but also manipulations, fraud, and just the overall power trippings of not only the government, but also the agencies connected to the government. That's just what they called them in American Conspiracy, the three-letter agencies, CIA, NSA, the DEA even. And I mean, they're all these types of interconnected networks that go well beyond the government. And that's more or less how this story gets the name The Octopus Murders, from my understanding. The way that an octopus has tentacles, there are all of these different little networks that are moving out in different directions. But what would be some of the signs that would indicate that Danny Casolaro was murdered? And the first one is that there was blood smeared all over the walls in hotel room 571 at the Sheraton. And again, from someone who runs a true crime channel here, that makes me think that, all right, I have to admit, now that's a clue that would suggest murder or some type of force. And even if staging the scene, even if the scene had been staged, was a very bizarre thing to do, because that would indicate that someone tried to make it look like a suicide. But the concept of smearing blood on the walls after somebody has slit their wrists and gone into a bathtub, that is also just very bizarre. And I mean, some type of forensic scientist might understand that better than I do, but I think that that is a clue that makes no sense at all. Now, the next one that is much more important is, again, I'm just trying to watch this with an open mind, and they said that he died from self-inflicted mutilation wounds. He had eight cut wounds to one arm, and then 4 cut wounds to the other arm in the wrist area. And again, I was thinking, now with that, that's also rather consistent to a lot of stories that we hear about people taking their own lives, and I thought that was consistent with the explanation of a suicide. But American Conspiracy, the Octopus Murders, points out that he not only had his wrist slashed, it also slashed the tendons in the wrist, and if that had happened, then he shouldn't have been able to continuously grip the knife and provide additional cut wounds. I mean, the blade that was used, anything. He shouldn't have been able to grip anything if his tendons had been cut. So that would suggest that he was murdered. So you have these suspicious circumstances around somebody who's on the verge of revealing a very large story dealing with an interconnected network of, well, not only criminal behavior, this just goes to global proportions. This is just the manipulations of things that people might call the deep state, the shadow government, the parallel government, the invisible government, and so on. And some people really do not want this stuff getting out. And to share something on a personal note, I used to think that people were overhyped about fear of the CIA and so on, overhyped about fear of the government listening to their electronic devices. But I did an interview once with somebody talking about this very subject, and what happened was I went to save the interview, and I was kicked out of my Skype account, which I used to record the interview call, and I tried to log back in 3 times, and then it said that it was permanently blocked, permanently locked, excuse me, permanently locked and inaccessible. And it could be just some type of coincidence, or it could be that it was confiscated by some type of a higher power. And that's when I began to rethink things, because during that interview, the person I was talking to was saying, "Hey, I'm noticing you're not asking me to censor myself or anything. Most people ask me to tone down the language when I'm on their show." And I was like, nah, 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 let's just talk openly and freely. And the next thing I know, the whole account gets shut down. So I think that there is a high possibility that these types of events do happen, and it's not just some twisted, wacky conspiracy the way that certain skeptics would have you believe. However, to provide a genuine piece of criticism, when I was watching this docu-series, American Conspiracy, The Octopus Murders, I noticed that a lot of what they wanted the audience to believe was not supported by the evidence. There's even somebody who's giving his side of the story, and he asked them to turn the camera off so he can tell it to them. Maybe it's out of the same fears that I was just talking about getting shut down or possibly killed like Danny Casolaro, or it could be for a different reason. But we in the audience do not know. There's so many things that we just don't know, and we're expected to believe that it is this type of conspiracy, but there is just insufficient evidence. Again, I mostly talk about true crime cases here on Black Box Online Radio, and you can hit the like button and subscribe if you want to follow along with these types of discussions. But what I found is, a lot of the time, you have a theory that someone is pushing, and the evidence has either been destroyed, possibly covered up, or it's just not present. And people raise these questions all the time. Well, if the evidence has been destroyed, how do you know that this theory is true? So there is some room for doubt in their presentation. So again, I was watching this Netflix docu-series with my family, American Conspiracy, The Octopus Murders, and in the second episode, they were talking about the triple homicide of Fred Alvarez, Patricia Castro, and Ralph Boger, and this took place in a different state in California. We thought the entirety of the docu-series was going to be all about West Virginia, but this was actually taking place in California. And in front of me, I have an article from the San Diego Union Tribune that I'll just read this right here. In the days before Fred Alvarez was shot execution style with two friends on his veranda, the strapping Cabazon tribal leader feared he was a marked man. His motorcycle had been tampered with, his mailbox had been shot up, and his house had been ransacked. This is again something that is very similar to the death of Danny Casolaro, where it appeared that somebody had information that could have gotten out, and was this man silenced? And again, from a true crime perspective, Netflix, via American Conspiracy, the Octopus murders, made a rather convincing forensic case that he was not only murdered but also specifically targeted. They said that the shooting would have had to have taken place where someone was standing comfortably between two of the victims, meaning that that person was well acquainted with them. Not to mention being shot execution style, almost as if somebody had been betrayed. And that's the next portion of the article that I would like to read. Some of the relatives wondered whether Alvarez might have also discovered a secret partnership between the Cabazon tribe in California and private security firm Wackenhut. Witnesses and court documents alternately describe the deal as everything from providing security services to building munitions arsenals into selling weapons to Nicaraguan Contras, a U.S.-backed rebel group. The tribal history also details various attempts to start weapons productions. Current officials at Wackenhut Services declined comment, and tribal officials did not respond to the interview requests. Rachel Bagley, whose father, Ralph Boger, died with Alvarez, has spent years researching the case. Bagley recorded Hughes on a hidden camera in 2008 at a religious conference as he said that Fred Alvarez died in a mafia hit that was a lot bigger than the murder of this guy or that guy. Again, this is coming from an article in the San Diego Union Tribune, and they're talking about how his motorcycle was tampered with, his house was ransacked. All of that indicates that this is not just some type of simple robbery. Yeah, the ransacking of a house, but if the motorcycle has been tampered with, and if we are accepting that this information is accurate, that seems like, again, that's not just about stealing something. It's not even about retrieving information, destroying evidence. It sounds like this guy was specifically targeted. Now, they have a different suspect in the docu-series American Conspiracy, the Octopus Murders, and there's somebody named John Philip Nichols, and he's mentioned here in the Union Tribune. Primary among them was John Philip Nichols, a business consultant hired by the tribe to help open its first casino. Nichols, who died in 2001, is now listed as a co-conspirator in the triple murder, and they said way more than this in the Netflix docu-series. What they said was that this case has been investigated, this case has been solved, but the person who did it has been let go. One thing that I found to be rather fascinating about this story, it's a terrible, terrible story, it's a triple homicide, but there are just countless news articles about this triple murder that go all up and down the years. We're talking 2010, 2017, and of course 2024 because of the revival of interest via Netflix, but people have been reporting on this for years, and I'm even going to go back up here and just read off the title, and it says, Arrest in 1981 Tribal Murders Revives Old Mystery, and they have a different suspect who was arrested, and his name was Hughes, and it says right here that he faced 3 counts of murder and conspiracy to commit the alleged killings of Fred Alvarez, as well as the 2 other participants, or the 2 other people that were with Fred Alvarez, Patricia Castro and Ralph Boger. I'll read off one final thing here. It says, before he died, Alvarez told the Indio Daily News 5 times that John Philip Nichols and other outsiders were cheating tribal members. He said that he had the feeling that I just know too much and they're going to kill me. And that's what someone has reported. And again, that might not be like an audio recording, because you can see the concept. You can recall the statement, wherever there's smoke, there's fire. And that's a lot of smoke. But the problem is, though, it seems like if people are committing these murders to cover up actions of this octopus-like web of conspiracies, they're actually pretty good at covering their tracks. And as I said, the docu by Netflix made a very convincing case, but they do have certain plot holes, or they have certain holes in their evidence, rather than plot holes. There are certain pieces of evidence that are missing from the presentation, but ultimately I would definitely lean toward both of these being murder-specific hits, people being silenced, but that's my own initial response to this. What do you think about any of the stories that you've heard here? And this is a response to parts 1 and 2 of this 4-part docuseries. On Thursday, I will release a response to parts 3 and 4. And if you have any ideas for future episodes of Black Box Online Radio, you can put them in the comments section down below. You can also go through some of the links in the description box. One of them is for BuyMeACoffee.com. BuyMeACoffee.com/BlackBoxNid88 allows you to make a donation or contribution to help support the show. Anybody who makes a donation will get a shout out on Zodiac Monday. Every Monday is Zodiac Monday here on Black Box Online Radio. And if you have something larger, you can send it to me at blackboxonlineradio@AOL.com. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and until next time.